Hello, hello everyone. My name is Rebecca Knox, and this is my presentation over Do You Remember the Summer of Love, written by Stephanie Powell Watts. So the Summer of Love it's the title of our story here, and it was actually a social phenomenon that occurred during the summer of 1967 when as many as 100,000 people, mostly young, like kind of hippies, converged in San Francisco's Haight Ashbury neighborhood. It basically was just all about hippie music, doing drugs, anti war, free love, all of that kind of stuff from that era. So, our main character is on her way to California, to San Francisco, to find her own summer of love. Jerry is actually from North Carolina. And at this point in the story, when we open in the story, she's actually in Birmingham, Alabama. So I have North Carolina as the red star, Alabama as the yellow star, and then California would be the purple heart over there. I did Heart for Love, because why wouldn't I? So the simple plot is that Jerry and her boyfriend Doug break up. Jerry goes on the road trip from North Carolina to California to find her own summer of love. And then Jerry stops at a hotel in Birmingham, Alabama, and meets Bowles, the bartender. So this genre is considered literary fiction. There's much more focus on the character and and their story versus actually pleasing the reader. I will add a note here that this story and Miss Watts kind of her writing took me a little bit to understand and kind of grasp that I had to do multiple read throughs to fully kind of comprehend everything. So let's meet our characters. So I picked images of actors that I could see portraying this if this had actually been a movie. So Jerry is 39 years old. She's from North Carolina. She broke up with Doug, is on a road trip to California, likes long walks on the beach, I assume, and obviously can't hold her liquor if you've read the story. She is an African American woman. It doesn't really go into the race of Doug at all, but a lot of Stephanie Powell Watts's writings in this book do have to do with African American characters, and I think that's just because she relates to that the most, being as she is African American as well. So this is who I picked to play Doug. Doug is the guy that cheated on Jerry with their mutual friend Rob. He's not the type of guy to go after Jerry now that she's left. She even states this in the book at some point uh, when she's kind of thinking about that whole situation. She's having a conversation with Bowles about it. He's not the guy to chase her down and have a boombox outside her window and be like, please take me back. Honestly, he kind of sounds like a jerk to me. So Rob, I picked Matt Damon. That's a little bit of an inside joke on my end, but he's the home wrecker that destroyed their relationship. And then this is who I picked as Bowles. He is described as being older than Jerry's parents. So I kind of picked an older gentleman in a bar. He's the bartender at the Marriott. His full name is Bowles, which is, I feel like there's a 007 joke in there somewhere, but that's his character's name, and he's roughly 60 or so, according to how Jerry perceives him. It doesn't actually say his age. So throughout this book, the protagonist is absolutely Jerry. She's the one who you kind of start rooting for throughout the story. She's the one who we're the most invested in and care about. The antagonist is Doug for the obvious reason. He's the whole reason why she is traveling from her hometown across the country in a car to get to California. He's the whole reason for it. Um, I would say that Bowles is an antagonist too, because Jerry seemed kind of iffy on whether she wanted to continue the journey or not at the beginning. She seemed like she was definitely having a hard time finding herself. And Bowles, I feel like, creeped her out enough and pushed her enough in that direction to where she's absolutely going to California now, no matter what it costs or what she has to do. So, for the full plot, the book opens with Jerry sitting in the bar of the Best Western in Birmingham, Alabama. And the book says, "To get the drinks, you have to spend time in the dark. Nothing's free. But turns out there's plenty cheap." And I think that that line says a lot about what's going on with her and Doug and her and Bowles and the entire story. Like, that line has a lot of meaning that I will kind of touch on later when we get to those parts. She winds up meeting Bowles, the bartender, and after making small talk, asks him if he knows of a good place to eat. Uh, that also comes into play later, and I will touch on. But Bowles mentions how she should drink some water. She's pounding drinks at this point. She hasn't eaten anything in a while, and she's obviously driven probably a good 8 hours or so from North Carolina to Alabama. So the girl needs some food, but Bowles definitely has noticed that she is intoxicated and should probably slow down. She even says she never drank that fast, but she had been stupid for a long time. So Jerry mentions the summer of love to Bowles and how it's romantic. So she's telling him that she has this romanticized idea of once she gets to California, she can find herself and really experiment and kind of do like the hippies did back in the 60s and just really reinvent herself. And then this is kind of where it goes into the part where she remembers her whole instance on how she found out about Doug and Rob. And she finds the text. She writes an angry note and is crying all over it, I'm sure, and then crumples it up and leaves it next to his phone. Instead of actually confronting Doug, she winds up just kind of running away. And that's the inciting incident that starts this entire story. I think that it also says a lot that she did not confront Doug. She also kind of does the same with Bowles later on, where she just kind of pushes herself to the side and doesn't really say what she wants. But then she goes back to her to hotel room. She winds up being woken by Bowles knocking on her door. Jerry knew there was something wrong about Bowles being at her door, but she couldn't pull the words together to object. And that, I think, is very key when it comes to Jerry's character, is that she has a hard time saying what she wants or standing up for herself or saying no in general. Uh, he invites her out to Papa's. So, like I mentioned earlier, he noticed that she needed food. She had been drinking too much. So he's like, okay, well, this is my in. I'm going to take her out to eat. And really, she truly only agreed due to how much she had drank. So, in the light, now that they're heading out to go and get their own food, she realizes how much older Bowles is than her. So as you remember, Jerry is 39, almost 40. So she is a good 20 something years younger than Bowles. She even mentions that Bowles looks older than her parents. So not the kind of guy you really want to be going out on a date with. So she insists on paying for her own food. She wants to be very clear to Bowles. This is not a date. I don't know what you're looking for after, but it ain't happening, buddy. Um, Bowles does ask her where she wants to go after, and she just kind of shuts that down in like a non-aggressive way. Jerry winds up remembering a one-night stand that she had years ago, and she talks about the guilt that she felt because she winds up going back to where Doug is, and I guess they were together at this point. The story doesn't explicitly say, but what it implies is that Jerry actually cheated on Doug originally, and he never found out about it. And when she went back home where Doug was, she started acting all super nice and being all friendly because she felt guilty. And now she thinks that due to her religion and, karma being what it is, that she basically made Doug cheat on her with Rob by cheating on him initially. So I think Bowles here realizes that she's kind of in a dark spot, remembering all of these dark things. And so he covers her hand with his and warns her to be careful. And the book says she didn't want to see the crazy that might be on his face that she'd completely missed before. And as soon as he touches her hand, I think she gets that gut feeling where she's like, this guy isn't safe. I'm not safe. I need to get out of this. She's getting uncomfortable, and she mentions that she wants to go back to the hotel 2 times before Bowles actually acknowledges her. So when they get back to the hotel, Jerry is rushing to basically get back inside, and Bowles actually calls her out on it. And he's like, "What's up with the rush?" And she kind of blows him off, and she's like, "No, I'm just gonna go inside." And he actually asks to come up to her room with him. And he says, "I'm not a bad man." Which, if you've ever seen a movie or read a book or even experienced life, the bad guys always say that they're not bad. And what she does is she actually responds to him and she goes, "I can see that. I'm sorry. I don't care. I wish I did." But she basically completely shuts him down and immediately goes back inside, where I believe she has a panic attack. The book describes her kind of riding up and down the elevator and imagining Bowles chasing her. What if he's there at her room whenever the elevator door opens, and she's full in a panic and not really quite logically there. And she does this so many times that eventually she goes back to the lobby floor and the door opens again, and the bellboy even asks her if she's okay. And I think that's her resounding moment. So she basically resolves that she will make it to California, and she tells him she's okay. So the story structure of Do You Remember the Summer of Love? It starts with us being in the Birmingham, Alabama, in the bar. That's our introduction. I think the inciting incident, even though it doesn't quite get fully described in the book, is when she realizes that Doug is cheating on her with Rob. Conflicts that we have in the story are the conflict that she has with Doug originally. Then she has the conflict with Bowles and him basically pressuring her into inviting him to her room when she doesn't want to. The climax is actually that same part where they get back to the hotel and she's riding up and down the elevator. There's definitely a sense of this is important. He could be there. Falling action, I wouldn't say that there's quite a lot of that. But the resolution and the new status quo is that she's going to California. She is going to basically romance herself. She doesn't need a man to do any of that. And the themes of this book are actions have consequences. So whether you believe that or not, Jerry herself believes that because she cheated on Doug, Doug cheated on her with Rob. So, on the same concept, if she's in the bar drinking and being irresponsible, she attracts a man who wants someone who is drunk and irresponsible. So that kind of leads into our choices in life can take us in different directions, and it's not always a good path. And then following your dreams is crucial to happiness. So Jerry believes, and as a reader, I believe that she's not going to be truly happy until she accepts who she is, moves to California, and really invests the time in herself to find herself. So, my feelings on this story are that it gets way better with multiple reads. I am not used to literary fiction when it comes to the way that there's no real conclusion or no real ending or anything like that. Stephanie Watts does an incredible job at layering her stories. And I almost look at it like an onion. Like I kind of had to reread it and start peeling back the layers to fully understand and fully appreciate what was written in this book. I do, however, at the end of the day, think that it is worthwhile to read. It is worthwhile to study, just because it's a different take on the typical stories that you would expect. And I honestly had a wonderful time reading this one. Well, thank you so much for watching this, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.